Well, at the start of the year, Daniel and John and I told you the story about a lady from London who went to China and spent many years there telling the Chinese people about Jesus. Can anybody remember her name? What was the name of the lady from London who went to China? Oh, brilliant. My star pupil, Gladys Aylward. Well remembered. Well, today we're starting a new serial story about a different woman who went not to China but to India. And her name was Amy Carmichael. And today and for the next few weeks we're going to be learning about her absolutely amazing life. So listen in as we learn about Amy. She was born not in London, but in Northern Ireland. And she was the oldest of 7 children. And she learned about God every Sunday when the family went to church. So that was a great thing to do. But also every night when the family read from the Bible together and prayed together. Now, I wonder what your favourite colour is. Who's got a favourite colour? Yellow. Anybody got a different favourite colour? You must have a favourite. Yes. Blue. Right. Well, Amy loved the colour blue. And her mother had blue eyes, lovely blue eyes. And Amy wished that she could have nice blue eyes like her mother. But Amy's eyes weren't blue, they were brown. Now, Amy had been told many times that God always answers prayer. And so one night, before she got into bed, she knelt down and she prayed that God would make her brown eyes blue, that he'd turn her brown eyes into blue eyes. And she was absolutely sure that God was going to answer her prayer. So in the morning, what did she do? She jumped out of bed, she ran to a mirror, she looked in the mirror, and guess what? Her eyes were still brown. And she was so disappointed that she could hardly hold back the tears. And she'd really prayed and she'd really believed that God would answer her prayer. And God always answers prayer, she'd been taught. Had God answered her prayer? What do you think? Had God answered her prayer? What do you think, Johnny? You'd say no. And a lot of people would say, no, he just didn't answer her. He ignored her. Silly praying for blue eyes anyway, isn't it? That's what some people would say. But Amy came to realise that when God answers prayer, sometimes he says yes. And sometimes he says, you have to wait. And sometimes he says, no. And what Amy didn't realise until many years later is that God had a very, very important reason why he said no to Amy's prayer for blue eyes. Well, when Amy was 27, she went to India as a missionary. And she wanted to tell the people that all about Jesus and all about the love of Jesus for them. And to do that, she had to learn the language of the Indian people, which was difficult. But something else important, and even more difficult, she had to learn and understand the way that the Indian people lived. Now look at Amy in this picture. She's talking to all those Indian people. Do you think that Amy looks just like the Indian people in that picture? Is she just like them? No. Anybody agree with Johnny? Oh, Les agrees with Johnny. That's good, Johnny. I agree with Johnny. Right. She doesn't look like an Indian at all, does she? The way she's dressed, the colour of her skin, her hair even. She's not like an Indian person at all. She looked very different. And because of that, these people, they saw Amy as an outsider. Somebody who wasn't really welcome. Maybe they listened politely sometimes, but she wasn't really welcome. And she wished that she could make herself look like them so that she could mix with them in the marketplace. Well, Amy knew that the people didn't worship the one true God. Instead, they worshipped idols, some of them rather ugly sorts of idols, made up gods. And she wanted to tell them about the true God and about Jesus so they would know how their sins could be forgiven. And what she thought she would like to do is to go into one of the temples so that she could understand more about what kind of gods they worshipped and exactly how did they worship them. She wanted to understand those things. But outsiders, like Amy, were not allowed in. The guards on the temple would never allow her in. So what could she do? Well, she believed that God would show her a way. And God did. Who likes coffee? Well, Amy discovered that she could use coffee to stain her face and her arms a nice sort of soft brown colour, just like the Indian women. And she wore an Indian sari. Ever heard of a sari? It's like a big piece of cloth that is wrapped around the body and over the shoulder, but some of the women can also wear it over their head as well. And so that's what Amy did. She dressed like an Indian woman and she stained her skin to look brown like the Indian woman. But would her plan work? Would the Indian people not notice that she was an outsider? What do you think? Well, her friends were convinced. They said, "Oh, now you look just like an Indian woman." And then one of them said, "You know what? It's a good job your eyes are not brown. I mean, if you had blue eyes or green eyes, they'd spot you straight away. You'd stand out like a sore thumb." And then suddenly Amy remembered the prayer she prayed when she was a little girl. And now she understood why God didn't give her blue eyes. Because if he'd done that, she would never, ever have been able to speak and tell these people in India about the Lord Jesus Christ. God had that important reason. And one day she walked right past the priests, the guards of the temple, into the temple and saw one of the many idols that the people worshipped. And she started to learn as much as she could about what the people believed and how they worshipped. One day she was following a crowd down a road leading to a temple. And there was this big wooden cart. And on the cart, in the middle of it, was this huge idol. And sat alongside the idol were 10 girls, 10 Indian girls, who were between 4 and 10 years old. same age as some of you. Do you think they look happy? Do you think they look happy? No. Actually, when Amy looked at the children's faces, she could see that they were filled with fear. And the cart went into the temple, and then the gates were closed. And Amy realized that these children were actually prisoners. They'd been taken from their families. They were going to be forced to serve the idol and become slaves to the priests for the rest of their lives. Amy was horrified, but none of the people felt that it was wrong. You see, it was all part of their religion that they followed. They didn't think it was anything wrong with it. And Amy was really worried as she stared at those prison gates. How could these children escape? And even if they did escape, where would they go? What could they do? Amy realized she was powerless by herself to do anything to help them. But there was one thing she could do. What do you think that was? Something Amy could do, even though she felt powerless to help these poor children. Pray. She could pray, and she did pray. But would God answer her prayer? That's the question. Come back next week, and you'll find out.